Carbon compounds. What elements does carbon bond with to make up life's molecules? Carbon atoms have 4 valence electrons, allowing them to form strong covalent bonds with many other elements, most commonly hydrogen, oxygen, phosphorus, sulfur, and nitrogen. Living organisms are made up of molecules that consist of carbon and these other elements and more. Carbon atoms can also bond to each other, which gives carbon the ability to form millions of different large and complex structures. Carbon-carbon bonds can be single, double, or triple covalent bonds. Chains of carbon atoms can even close up on themselves to form carbon rings. The benzene ring. Many of the organic compounds in living cells are carbon-based, macromolecules or giant molecules made from thousands or even hundreds of thousands of smaller molecules. Most macromolecules are formed by a process known as polymerization, in which large compounds are built by joining smaller ones together. Monomers join together by polymerization to make a polymer. The smaller units, or monomers, join together to form polymers. The monomers in a polymer may be identical or different. What are the functions of each of the 4 groups of macromolecules? 4 groups of organic compounds found in living things are carbohydrates, lipids, nucleic acids, and proteins. The next 4 slides will give an introduction to these 4 macromolecules. For carbs, living things use carbohydrates as their main source of energy. Plants, some animals, and other organisms also use carbohydrates for structural purposes. Carbohydrates are compounds made of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen, usually in a ratio of 1:1. So 1 carbon to 2 hydrogen to 1 oxygen. Lipids can be used to store energy. Some lipids are important parts of biological membranes and waterproof coverings. Lipids are generally not soluble in water. Common categories of lipids are fats, oils, waxes, and steroids. And it is an important part of your diet. Without lard, we wouldn't be as healthy. Nucleic acids store and transmit hereditary or genetic information. Nucleic acids are polymers assembled from individual monomers known as nucleotides. Some proteins control the rate of reactions and regulate cell processes. Others form important cellular structures, while still others transport substances into or out of cells or help to fight disease. Proteins are macromolecules that contain nitrogen, carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. Protein polymers are molecules made of amino acids. Carbohydrates. Carbohydrates are compounds made up of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen atoms, usually in a ratio of 1:2:1. Carbon, hydrogen, oxygen. Living things use carbohydrates as their main source of energy. The breakdown of sugars, such as glucose, as shown here, supplies immediate energy for cell activities. Plants, some animals, and other organisms also use carbohydrates for structural purposes. Many organisms store extra sugar as complex carbohydrates known as starches. The monomers in starch polymers are sugar molecules such as glucose. Single sugar molecules are also known as monosaccharides. Besides glucose, monosaccharides include galactose, which is a compound of milk, and fructose, which is found in many fruits. Ordinary table sugar, sucrose, is a disaccharide, a compound made by joining glucose and fructose together. Complex carbohydrates, the large macromolecules formed from monosaccharides, are known as polysaccharides. So here's glucose, fructose, and galactose. Combined together, they make polysaccharides, starch, cellulose, and glycogen. Many animals store excess sugar in polysaccharides called glycogen. When the level of glucose in your blood runs low, glycogen is broken down into glucose, which is then released into the blood. The glycogen stored in your muscles supply the energy for muscle contraction. Plants use slightly different polysaccharides called starches to store excess sugar. Plants also make another important polysaccharide called cellulose, which gives plants much of their strength and rigidity. Lipids. Lipids are a large and varied group of biological molecules. Lipids are made mostly from carbon and hydrogen atoms and are generally not soluble in water. The common categories of lipids are fats, oils, and waxes. Lipids can be used to store energy. Some lipids are important parts of biological membranes and waterproof coverings. Steroids synthesized by the body are lipids as well. Many steroids, such as hormones, serve as chemical messengers. Many lipids are formed when a glycerol molecule combines with the compounds called fatty acids. Glycerol combined with fatty acids. Nucleic acids. Nucleic acids store and transmit hereditary or genetic information. Nucleic acids are macromolecules containing hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, carbon, and phosphorus. Nucleic acids are polymers assembled from the individual monomers known as nucleotides. Nucleotides consist of three parts: a 5-carbon sugar, a phosphate group, and a nitrogenous base. Nitrogenous base, 5-carbon sugar, and the phosphate group. Some nucleotides, including adenosine triphosphate, ATP, play important roles in capturing and transferring chemical energy. Individual nucleotides can be joined by covalent bonds to form a polynucleotide or nucleic acid. There are two kinds of nucleic acids: ribonucleic acid, RNA, and deoxyribonucleic acid, DNA. RNA contains the sugar ribose, and DNA contains the sugar deoxyribose. Protein. Proteins are macromolecules that contain nitrogen as well as carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. Proteins are polymers of molecules called amino acids. Proteins perform many varied functions, such as controlling the rate of reaction and regulating cell processes, forming cellular structures, transforming substances into or out of cells, and helping to fight disease. Amino acids are compounds with an amino group on one end and a carboxyl group on the other end. Covalent bonds called peptide bonds link amino acids together to form a polypeptide. Alanine and serine combine together with a peptide bond between the two. So all amino acids are identical in the amino and carboxyl groups. Any amino acid can be joined to any other amino acid by a peptide bond formed between the amino and the carboxyl groups. Amino acids differ from each other in a side chain called the R group, which have a range of different properties. More than 20 different amino acids are found in nature. This variety results in the proteins being among the most diverse macromolecules. So the proteins have 4 levels of structure. A protein's primary structure is the sequence of its amino acids. The secondary structure is the folding or coiling of the polypeptide chain. The tertiary structure is the complete 3-dimensional arrangement of the polypeptide chain. And finally, the proteins with more than one chain have a fourth level of structure, which describes the way in which different polypeptide chains are arranged with respect to each other. For example, the protein shown, hemoglobin, consists of 4 subunits, 2, 3, and 4.